Imagine waking up to find that the land beneath your feet is vanishing. Your coconut trees are salt burned, the sea is taking over land, and your entire country is on the verge of disappearing in just a lifetime. Tuvalu, a string of tiny coral atolls in the South Pacific, is sinking, slowly but steadily. I'm Nasra Marbwana, and this is Aloud from TRT Global Podcasts. This show brings you TRT Global articles made for audio. In this episode, we've adapted the article titled, "What is a Climate Visa and Why Are Tuvalu Residents Desperate to Get It?" This article was published in June 26, 2025. The Pacific island nation of Tuvalu is disappearing. 2 of its 9 coral atolls have largely been submerged by rising seas. Scientists warn that the rest of the country may be uninhabitable in less than 80 years. Faced with an existential crisis, nearly 1/3 of Tuvalu's population is doing something unprecedented. They're applying for a visa because of climate change. Under a new deal between Australia and Tuvalu, 280 citizens will be allowed to relocate to Australia every year. They can live, study, and work in Australia. More than 3,000 people, nearly a third of Tuvalu's 10,000 citizens, have already applied for the lottery in June 2025. It's called the Australia-Tuvalu-Falepili Union, which came into force in 2024. Falepili is a Tuvaluan word that connotes good neighborliness, care, and mutual respect. Australia is calling it the first climate mobility agreement of its kind. It costs $16 to register, but it's only limited to adults. So what does this mean? Let's be clear. This isn't this traditional refugee crisis. Tuvaluans aren't fleeing war or persecution. They're fleeing a slow sort of violence of rising seas. Saltwater intrusion has ruined farmlands. Storm surges regularly flood homes, and drinking water is becoming increasingly scarce. The climate crisis has turned Tuvalu's white sands and turquoise lagoons into a ticking clock. Tuvalu's Prime Minister Feleti Teo called the Falepili Agreement a lifeline. But this moment also raises some questions. What happens to a country that loses its land? Can a nation exist without territory? And can a culture survive without place? Australia says it will recognize Tuvalu's sovereignty even if the country becomes uninhabitable, a major legal step in climate-era geopolitics. But experts say this sets a complicated precedent. What some call mobility with dignity, others worry is managed retreat. It signals a deeper reality of the current global climate order. Wealthier countries responsible for the lion's share of emissions are now offering rescue options to those drowning in their consequences, preferring to absorb climate survivors rather than prevent the crisis that is displacing them in the first place. Tuvalu emits almost nothing, yet it's paying the highest price. Rather than investing meaningfully in reducing carbon emissions or assisting Pacific nations in long-term environmental resilience, the solution is resettlement. It's a lifeboat that's not even for all, just for a lucky few who qualify. So, what will happen to those left behind? Activists in Tuvalu say that the Falepili Union Treaty should be treated more of a Plan B and not a Plan A.
I've been an advocate and a youth advocate for climate mobility, but it doesn't mean that we are right now requiring the movement of people at this stage. What we advocate for is the clear path of people to move when it comes to worst case scenarios. And the Falepili Treaty has put us that, have shown a clear path. But it has to be, it's supposed to be a Plan B, not a Plan A.
It's an emotional one, and it's not a fair situation from our end that we are facing the brutal impacts of this crisis that we contribute very little to. And what's endangered is our identity to our land, our identity as Tuvaluans, and the future of our children and our descendants. And that's very concerning.
Tuvalu's Prime Minister Feliciteo says that the pact offers more than visas. It's kind of a promise, and it legally obligates defense support from Australia during disasters, pandemics, or military aggression. And it's the first of such guarantee from any nation. But sovereignty is a tricky thing. The agreement also gives Australia a say in any future defense pacts Tuvalu might sign, effectively tying its geopolitical hands at a time when China is also seeking influence in the region. Tuvalu is just one of 12 states that still have formal diplomatic relations with Taipei rather than China. This comes as a reminder that even when we're dealing with climate displacement, the power of politics still lingers. Tuvalu isn't alone. Across the globe, dozens of low-lying island nations from Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, and the Maldives face a similar future. The UN estimates that over 1.2 billion people could be displaced by climate change by 2050. And while the 2015 Paris Agreement aims to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius, the latest UN and Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports in 2023 put us on track for a 2.4 to 2.9 degree increase by the end of the century. This is a death sentence for many coastal and island nations. The Tuvalu-Australia Pact may well be a preview of what's about to come. Critics argue that true climate justice would mean prioritizing prevention and not just focusing on relocation. It would mean cutting emissions, holding polluters accountable, and investing in infrastructure so communities like Tuvalu's don't have to abandon their homes. Because no one wants to leave their ancestral lands, their graves, their histories. But still, yet for many Tuvaluans, the clock is ticking. And a ticket to Australia may be the only escape in this current crisis. So we ask, is this the future of climate response? Visa lotteries, geopolitical deals, quiet abandonment? Or can global solidarity rise before the sea does? That's all for this episode. This Aloud episode is an adaptation of an article on TRT World. Thanks for listening.